Hi everyone, it's Christine Sloan here, ready to teach you our second edition of Spencerville Fair virtual art lesson. This time I've chosen these ducks. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. These are cute little guys and you can really paint them any way you would like. If you want to do the colorful ones like we did the pig, you can, but you don't have to. You can follow along with what I do today. So today, the paint that I've used are white, yellow, blue, and black. And I'm using just a little palette from the dollar store, using two sizes of paintbrushes, a large one and a small one. Now I drew them out really quickly just so I had an idea of where things are. You don't have to do that because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to outline them. So we're going to do an outline or a contour line drawing if you remember from our first lesson. So we're going to outline them in just in a blue for now. We're just going to outline the outside. We're not going to worry about the beaks or anything right now, just the outlines of them. All right, so let's do that. We are going to do blue because we're going to do a blue background. My blue is right out of the bottle, but I want to add some white to it. So I'm going to take my paint and add white directly to the blue so that I can do a blue, light blue background. Alrighty, so added some white to it. Now I'm going to mix it up. And I'm going to start drawing using paint. So I'm going to use my small brush. And I'm going to draw the outline of our ducks first. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, dip our brush into water and then into the paint. And we're going to start with our first duck. We'll outline him. We're not going to worry too much about the blue outline because we're going to paint white on top. And again, like I said, we're not going to paint the beaks or anything right now. So let's start. So I'm going to start with the first one. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to draw a semicircle, a small semicircle, okay, right in the middle of our page. Like that, okay, or an upside down U. All right, I guess, yeah, more of an upside down U than a semicircle. And on the left hand side, so this side here, I'm going to keep going down and I'm going to go in a little bit of a curve and then out to make the body, okay, all the way down to the edge. And I noticed that I curved all the way out to the edge. I got bigger as I went to make his body. And I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to draw just the corner of the beak. I'm not worried about the inside right now. So I'm taking my brush and I'm going to go down to about halfway into our canvas. And I'm going to paint around just a little, almost like a backwards C, okay? So you don't have these inside lines. We're gonna worry about those after, but we're just doing the outline of it right now. So a little backwards C, and then stop and come down a little bit and then curve to the right, just to make the bottom of his body. So again, you don't see this inside, so don't worry about that. We're just drawing lines right now. So you're following my voice, but seeing what I'm doing as well. So right beside this middle guy to the left, we're gonna do this fella. So again, the top of the head, same thing, like an upside down U. That's the best way to start, is with letters that you know or shapes that you know. On the left hand side, we are going to come out and draw a sideways U, or really long C. See how it's not perfectly like the letter C, but if we were to turn our U on its side, that's what we would come up with. And from there, you're going to draw straight down and then curve to the left to make his body. And then on the right-hand side, just straight down and then curve until you reach the other duck. So right now it looks like some strange shapes, but we're drawing the contour of our duck and it will all come together very shortly. Now we have this guy over here on the right-hand side. So again, our upside down U, right beside him. You can make him as tall as the other two. I made mine shorter. So you can have a shorter guy. And on the left hand of the U, you're gonna go curve in and then curve to the left until you run into the bird in the middle. So now you have almost like a hook. So this will be tricky because now we're going to draw the outline of this beak, but it's almost like a U shape, again, turned on its side, but this time it's a long U shape. So draw a nice long U shape all the way around. Okay, and again, we're gonna be painting in that orange and that sort of thing. Or yellow, not orange. All right, so now we're going to draw the bottom of his body. So I stopped my U shape and I'm going to go down to draw the neck and then curve out to the right to create his body. So we have 1, 2, 3 birds. Right now you have 1, 2, 3 strange shapes, but I promise you they will turn into ducks. All right, so now we're gonna work on our background. Because we're going to use the same blue for our background, I'm switching to my big brush so it's easier, but I have lots of blue left over from my outline. So now I'm gonna do my background, and I'm going to paint my background with little X's. So if you took the first lesson with me, the pig, the reason I do little X's like this is to create texture. So it's just more interesting to the eye. Okay, if you have lots of paint, you can put lots of paint on it so that it looks and feels like texture, or you can just do these little X's back and forth. All right, so back and forth, paint the whole entire background, whatever background color you want. We mixed this blue for the outline, and that's why, because I was using it is a background. So go right into all of the spots. Okay. All across the top. Now I also paint the top of my canvas and the sides of my canvas. And the reason I do that is it looks more complete, and also I don't need to buy a fancy frame. I can just hang it on a nail and call it a day. So that's why I paint my sides. So all around, and you'll notice I'm just doing crisscrosses. I like that kind of messy background. If you want it nice and smooth, you can do that as well. You can go back and forth or up and down. So around the duck's face, now again, you just have some outlines. Right now, they don't look fully like ducks, but they will. Right, keep going all the way around. Now if you find you're running out of paint, you can pause this video and mix some more. It's the great thing about technology. You can pause and come back. So I'm just painting around the ducks. crisscrosses. There we go. And again, you can do all sorts of things in your background. If you want to take some white, you can add some white in the background right on top of that blue and create some little crisscrossy clouds all in the background. It's completely up to you. It's your own personal preference. It's your painting, so just have some fun with it. Don't forget to paint the sides. There we go. Clean my brush off and we're ready for the next step. All right, so we are ready to paint the bodies of our ducks. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our white. So make sure that you have a lot of white because we have a lot of body to cover. So the great thing about this is we can paint the ducks white and then we can paint the orange or yellow beaks right on top of them. All right, so I have them drawn out. If you want, you can pause the video and draw them out. You don't have to, because I'm going to show you how to put them on. But we can paint this whole inside area white so that it's fully covered. We tend, as artists, not to leave the canvas blank. We do, even though the canvas is white, we do paint the canvas white so that it looks finished. Okay, so I've got my white. Using my big brush, just because it's going to cover a lot more, and I'm going to paint these whole things white, okay? Even the beaks, even these parts that you drew that are beaks. So we're going to paint the whole thing. Try and go a little slow towards your blue, because your blue might still be wet. But I'm painting the whole entire ducks. Now you can see my pencil is smudging, and that's okay. It's going to just help us with painting the outline. So I'm painting one whole coat of just white. You may have to turn your head a little bit or put it up to the light so that you can see that you've covered it all. It should be shiny. So you're going to do the same thing with this guy in the middle. Paint the whole thing white. We're going to add a little bit of texture in a little bit at the very end to make it look like a little bit of feather. Okay, but not right now. Right now we're just doing pure white, covering the whole thing in white. Every spot that is canvas. So again, you might have to turn your head just to see if you reached it all. Now I'm on to my third duck. Getting that really long beak area. Again, being careful near my blue because it's still a little wet. And don't worry about these lines here. Even though they're blue, we are going to make these lines disappear. This is where we're going to put our last coat of our feathers. We'll cover those blue. All right, so making sure I have white everywhere. We're gonna let that white dry a little bit. Okay, it doesn't take long when you do a light layer. Okay, so we've let it dry a little bit. It might still be a little tacky. What we want to do now is add a second layer of white, but this time we are going to add a few little feathers. And we're going to do that very, very lightly. So I have a little bit of black. I'm going to take, I'm going to show you, I'm going to take my white and I'm going to add just a tiny smidgen of black. See, just that much. And I'm going to put it in my container and I'm going to mix it around. It is going to become gray. And we're going to use that gray to create depth and feathers to make them look like they have a body and that their neck, their beaks are popping out from their neck, okay? So I'm still using my big brush. If your big brush is too big, then use your medium or your small. So now I have gray on my brush, and it's a light gray, okay? It's a very light gray. Now I'm going to paint a little bit of gray underneath their beaks on their necks. So we're gonna start with this guy over here, the left guy. So where we stopped that U shape, we're going to paint a little bit of gray, just little gray lines, just a little bit, and it's gonna blend down into our white. Okay, just like this, and you can see it's on an angle. And this is going to give the illusion that this beak is gonna pop out to us. Okay, so I kind of drew this line, angled line, and then I painted little brush strokes on an angle going down his neck. I'm gonna go down further on his left side, and I'm going to, and I haven't added any more gray, I'm going to paint a little bit of gray, mix it with that white just along the left-hand side of him, okay? And on the right-hand side, just like this. So again, if you need to pause to take a look at what I did, you can do that. So I put some under his neck, just a little bit of gray. We're gonna blend this with white in a few minutes. A little bit of gray down on the side, left side, and a little bit of gray on the right side. And then with my pure white, I'm going to go back and blend my white into my gray. So I take white on my brush, and I'm going to go back and forth, up and down into my gray to blend it. And I'm just lightly touching the canvas. Okay, all the way down, always adding a little bit of white as you brush. So I'm just barely touching the canvas. And I can use some of that white and go up into his head, all the way around to do that second layer of white. It might be a white kind of gray, which is fine because ducks are a little dirty and they're not pure white. So already you can see that something is poking out here because we've created dimension. All right, so that's our first duck. Now we're gonna come over to our right-hand duck and we're gonna do the same thing. So I dip my brush into the gray that I mixed. This time we don't need to paint here because that's the background, but we still want a little bit of darkness in his neck and on the side of his body. Okay, so a little bit of gray here underneath, so I made like a line on an angle, and back and forth with some gray, and a little bit of gray down the body. And this is where you can go into the blue a little bit. Okay, you can go into the blue if you want. And then a little bit of gray in the back area. Not much, there's not a lot of room here. Okay, so gray on this angle, just a little bit down here on the front of his body and on the back of his body. And then like we did before on this guy, we dip our brush into the white and then we just barely touch the canvas, but blend our white and gray together, back and forth, and re-dip into the white to get more, to create a little more dimension. And if you can see streaks of gray or streaks of white, that's perfect. Dipping it back into my white, and this time I'm going into his head. Doing a second layer of white into his head. This time though, I'm stopping at the edge where that beak's going to go. Okay, there. So this guy's done, this guy is done for now. Now we're gonna paint this fellow in the middle, and that's where we're gonna get rid of these blue lines, okay? So, going back to my gray, and if you need to mix a little more, you can mix a little more. I just mixed just a tiny bit more. A little bit of black with lots of white. All right, so right here, this is where we came out a little bit. We made a little bit of a curve here, a backwards C. So we are going to paint gray in a hook shape. And I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna draw a line in gray, just like that. So it's a little hook. All right, so that's your gray, and you're gonna bring it down just a little bit underneath that hook. And you can go right to the sides and cover that blue if you want. And you can put some gray on the left-hand side, and I went right over that blue. And again, if you have to use more gray, then you can do that. Went over that blue. And on the right, make it a little thicker actually. There we go. And then on the right-hand side, same thing. Go right into that blue with the gray. The blue will poke out a little bit, and that will give us the separation between the ducks. All right, so that is actually helping us to separate the three ducks. Sorry, I had to mix some more gray. Okay, and bring that gray just a little into his belly. All right, so I've done some gray under his beak, and I made like a J hook here, backwards J, and on the right and the left of his body. And like we've done to the other two ducks, I get a big scoop of white, and I'm going to paint white into the gray along the edge, back and forth, and I'm barely touching my canvas so that they will mix together. And if you still have gray on your brush, like I just did, give it a good wash so you can go back to pure white. There we go. And just softly blending it into our gray, scooping another scoop of white all the way to the bottom, and blending it into our gray, and even coming up into this head with the white you have on your brush. This time we are going to just do the top of the head and the sides. We're not going to worry about the center. Okay, top of the head and the sides. Top of the head, left-hand side, blending a little bit of that gray, and then top of the head, right-hand side, down. There we go. We have some funny looking ducks. Washing my brush off. And again, you can pause this video and go back and fiddle around with it as you go. That's the great thing about this. Alrighty, let's get some beaks going. So, yellow. If you have a little tiny bit of red, use that because we are going to make orange. Okay, so yellow with a little bit of red, mix that around. Mix, mix, mix to create an orange that you like. Everybody's orange might be a little different. Okay? All right, add a little bit of water just to make it move a little more. Paints are different. You might have a paint that's really, really thick. You can add a little bit of water, or you can have paints that are really thin and you might have to do a few layers. All right, so I have my orange that I'm happy with. Everybody's orange is going to be different. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in those spots to make the beak. And then we're going to add the fine details like the little, they have these little peaks. All right, we're going to do those after. First thing, fill the whole spot where your beaks are. So on the left-hand guy over here, we did a long C. So we're going to fill that space with our orange. We're going to do a couple coats. Okay, so I filled that spot with our orange. I'm going to fill this one with our orange. Okay, where that hook was that we painted with gray, and then that little spot where we painted with blue. And it goes up into the head, but we're going to put more details on that in a second. And then my last one over here, that long U shape that we created, you're going to fill that in with your orange, not yellow, orange, right up to the edge. Now they're starting to look like something. So I was using my big brush. I'm going to switch to my little brush so I can get some finer details. So if you're in the same boat as me, you can do that. Because now we want to get these little peaks. Okay, and I'm going to show you, we're going to do them one at a time. So we'll start with our left-hand side here. So I'm going to go to the left-hand side of his face, of his head, about halfway down. And I'm going to draw a line straight down to meet my orange that I've already drawn or painted. And then I'm going to draw the letter U to another peak. Okay, peak like that. And then I'm going to come straight down to meet where I drew that gray line, where I painted that gray line. And I'm going to fill this whole entire thing with orange. Awesome. Next guy, we'll come back to this guy in a little bit. This guy, we've already painted half of our beak orange, so we just need to do the peaks here. So I'm going to go straight from the center of his head, straight down to meet the rest of the beak, draw a U shape, and then straight down to meet the other side of the beak, and then fill all that in. And last but not least, our final duck. This guy only has one peak because he's turned sideways. So the one peak is actually the edge of that shape. Our other peak is going to be over here. So you're talking about a little over than half, and we're going to draw a U shape like that. So U shape like that. And then come straight down to meet the bottom of our beak and then fill that in. Now, if you have any orange left, you can go back and do a few little brush strokes of the orange on each one, just to put a second coat. Okay, I'm just doing a second coat really quickly. Again, if you don't have any orange left, that's okay. You can mix some more. Okay, there we go. Just a second coat of that orange. All right. So once you've done your second coat, you can wash your brush off. And you're going to still use your small brush, but I'm going to take a brush full of white paint. and on the beaks, on the tops of each side. So I'm going to choose the top, the left-hand side. I'm going to paint a few brush strokes of white on that side. And this guy, I'm going to go kind of in the center. And this guy, I will go on the right-hand side. I'm just drawing highlights. Okay, these are highlights, so it looks like their beaks are three-dimensional, but also that they're shiny. Now, if I really wanted to, I could take my orange and add a little bit of darkness to it, a little bit of black or a little bit of brown or green, and I could put a little bit underneath to show that three-dimensionality, but we use that gray for that reason, to make it pop out. All right. Okay, so now some final details. We're going to add the eyes and the nostrils. Using my small brush and using my black, I'm adding a little bit of water to my black just so that it can be a little thinner. Okay, now we're going to do the final details. So I'm going to start with my guy over here, the left-hand one, and we're going to draw the eyes. So the eyes on each one are on the side of their head. Okay, so this guy, we can't see his eye because it's on that side of his head. So we can only see his eye over here. And how I kind of measure them out, the eyes are just beside the peaks of their beaks. That rhymed, peaks of their beaks. So their eyes are round, but they have little points to them. So I'm going to draw on here so you can see. So their eyes are round, round, and they have little peaks on each side. Okay, if that makes sense. And I just realized that wasn't even in camera. There we go. Okay, so round, and then just these little peaks on each side of it. Technology is good sometimes. All right. Okay, so I have my paintbrush with a little bit of black. I'm gonna go over to this guy. And if your background is dry, you can actually put your pinky on the background to help you draw, okay? So I'm gonna try and bring this a little closer so you can see, and I'll try and keep my hand out of the way. So this guy is going to have a round eye, fill that in, and then it's gonna have, he or she will have just little peaks on each side, just like little corners of their eye. Okay, so there you go. His other eye is just on the edge here. So I mean, if you really wanted to, you could put a little line just to kind of give the illusion that his eye is there. Just a little line. And then they have little nostrils on their beaks. So we can only see one side of the nostril, and it's just a little diamond shape. Just a little diamond shape. And again, you can't really see the other side, so I'm not worrying about that. Now to our center guy, you can see both of his eyes on each side. So again, we start with our circle, fill that in, and then have your, my white is not dry, so you might be in the same boat. So if that's the case, just let it dry or blow on it, and then you can add the black. So just little corner peaks on each side. So what happens when you put wet, white, and black together? It makes gray. So I might just have to wait and come back to it in a second. And I'm gonna do my other eye here, right on the edge. Again, measure it out so it's just on the edge of the peaks of his beak. So this guy round with little corners. And then diamond shaped nostrils on each side. and they don't have to be perfect. I will come back and darken up this eye in a little bit. And then finally this guy, we can only see one eye because he's turned the other way. So we draw his circle, fill it in, and we soften that circle with just little points on each side and a little diamond shape nostril. I'm just coming back maybe to darken this guy's eye. There we go. Now pan back, and there's your little ducks. Fun little ducks. Anyway, thank you for joining, and stay tuned for some more virtual art lessons.